All set.
Okay. Good evening, everyone. I'd like to welcome you to the Hampstead School Board meeting of Tuesday, November 10th, 2020. Before we begin, I would like to read our statement regarding remote meetings. As chair of the Hampstead School Board, I find that due to the state of emergency declared by the governor as a result of the COVID-19 pandemic and in accordance with the governor's emergency order number 12 pursuant to Executive Order 2020-04, this public body is authorized to meet electronically. Please note that there is no physical location to observe and listen contemporaneously to this meeting, which was authorized pursuant to the governor's emergency order. However, in accordance with the emergency order, I am confirming that we are A, providing public access to the meeting by telephone. We are utilizing Zoom for this electronic meeting. All members of the board have the ability to communicate contemporaneously during this meeting through this platform, and the public has access to contemporaneously listen to this meeting by dialing the following phone number: 888-475-4499 or 877-853-5257. B, providing public notice of the necessary information for accessing the meeting. We previously gave notice to the public of the necessary information for accessing the meeting, including how to access the meeting using Zoom telephonetically. Instructions have also been provided on the district website at hampsteadschools.net. C, providing a mechanism for the public to alert the public body during the meeting if there are problems with access. If anybody has a problem, please email hmstechnology@hampsteadschools.net. D, adjourning the meeting if the public is unable to access the meeting. In the event the public is unable to access the meeting will be adjourned and rescheduled. Please note that all votes that are taken during this meeting shall be done by roll call vote. Melissa, will you please call the roll?
Megan Malcolm,
I'm here. I'm alone in this room as well as my house.
Caitlin Parnell,
Here, I'm alone in the room. There are other members of my family in the house.
David Smith, I think you're muted. David, I didn't hear that response. Did anyone else hear that?
No, I couldn't hear.
He's not muted either. I think it's his mic.
Can you guys hear me now?
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah.
All right, I'm here alone in the room and others are in the house.
Thank you, David. Jim Sweeney,
Here, alone in the room, other family members in the house.
Karen Yasenka,
Here, alone in my office, there are other members of the family in the house.
Executive Consultant, Dr. Earl Metzler.
Present, I'm in my home office and there are other members of my family in the house.
Thank you.
Thank you, Melissa. Next, board members, we have two sets of minutes that we'll be looking for approval on. They are the regular meeting of October 27th and our non-public meeting also of October 27th. You can take a moment to review if you have not yet done so, and then I will be looking for a motion on both of these, either together or separate. And you're ready? Someone wants to give a motion.
I'd like to make a motion to accept the meeting minutes from October 27th, regular meeting, and October 27th, non-public.
Thank you. Do we have a second?
Second.
Okay. Any discussion or questions Seeing none. Melissa, will you please call the vote?
Ms. Malcolm,
Yes.
Mrs. Parnell,
Yes.
Mr. Smith,
Yes.
Mr. Sweeney,
Yes.
Mrs. Yusenka.
Yes.
Thank you. Motion carries.
Thank you. Next on the agenda are public comments. Melissa, I believe we have requests for public comments this evening.
Yes, Madam Chair, we got 3 requests that came in today before 4 p.m. The first one came in by a resident named Kimberly Organic.
Okay, Ms. Organic, Mr. Flynn's going to make you a panelist. So once I see that on my screen.
Hang on one second. I have. Caitlin, I've promoted them twice and they have not accepted it.
Okay, Ms. Organic, if you can accept that promotion to a panelist, we can.
There we go.
Oh, okay. Okay. Oh, moving around. Okay. I'm gonna now I'll ask you to you're gonna get a message to unmute. So you,
Yep.
oh, I
all
think you're
set.
good. Okay. All right, you are good to go.
Tonight, I'm speaking as an educator and concerned parent whose family has lived in this town for 3 generations. I chose to send my children to the Hampstead schools as I know the dedicated, quality teachers that we have in our district. My concerns are not directed at their teachers, but rather the leadership or lack thereof in the creation and execution of a plan that would prevent further regression in our students' academic progress. Tonight, I'm asking you, the board, to investigate and provide answers to the following questions. First, why wasn't there any foresight to create a plan that placed students who last summer indicated they would be remote in a designated remote class at each grade level? Instead, everyone was given what appears to be random homeroom assignments, and now, 9 weeks into school, our children are being introduced to new teachers and classmates. If the students who intended to be remote this year were kept together from the beginning, any changes in homeroom assignments would have impacted only a few students when we're entering a new phase rather than all students and teachers. During the first few weeks of school, my children have had a total of 3 hours per day of synchronous or asynchronous schoolwork. According to the state law, to meet the hourly requirements of an adequate education, teachers would need to hold office hours or be available for students to Zoom in with their teacher if they should need assistance while working asynchronously. Why were students not given the opportunity to take the state test remotely as instructed by the state? Giving students the link to take the assessment from home was a simple task, requiring my child to enter the school building to take the assessment put her health at risk unnecessarily. It was suggested that we opt out of the test. It was important to me that my daughter had the opportunity to take the test that she would have had last spring to best prepare her for the test this year. In addition, data from that test should be considered when teachers are planning their instruction to close the gaps created during the pandemic and to increase student achievement overall. More than half of my daughter's class did not take the state mandated test, and those students, I'm told, sat in the library and read silently. When parents opt their children out of testing, it is a requirement that they approve the alternate activity their child participates in during the testing session. Did all of those parents approve their child reading silently when they had an opportunity for much needed in-person instruction? Why are the board meetings still held remotely? If it is safe for the students and staff to meet in person, it should be the same for the board. Someone had told me that you are remaining remote because you have more viewers. In the past, meetings were broadcast via the local cable channel. Nowadays, you can stream that video online. Why do the leaders of this district do not show their face? Many school districts and colleges require students to participate in classes on camera. We should expect the same from our leadership. It is very impersonal and creates an air of distrust. It is disheartening to say that Hampstead is not providing my children the education that my father, brothers, niece, nephew, and I received while growing up in this town. While the task of planning an effective instructional model during a pandemic is difficult, it is not impossible. It takes
Ms.
months.
Organic, I am going to ask you to wrap up. You've had your 3
Education
minutes.
Professionals and community, a transparent process that reassures the public their children's needs will be met and builds trust amongst all. Parents in this
Okay.
town are not feeling heard.
I
and
am
they
going to
feel
have to cut you off
suspicious.
because that is 3 minutes. I apologize. We do have 2 other people that we need to fit in the allotted time. Thank you. Okay, Melissa, we have the next public comment, please.
The second person requesting public comment is a resident named Lori Elliott.
Okay. Okay, Ms. Elliott, you're going to get a message to unmute. Okay, I think you're unmuted.
I believe so.
Yep, we can hear you.
The lighting's probably not very good.
Okay. Go ahead.
Good evening, school board. I have a couple questions regarding school. The thing, I actually applaud Mrs. Organic. I think she did a very good job speaking, and I have the same questions myself. In addition, some of the items I'd like to address are the middle school curriculum does not seem to be as robust as Hampstead Central School. I have a 4th grader who seems to be getting more work, and his curriculum seems to be of better rigor than of my middle schooler. She's the one that I feel that I should actually have the more robust curriculum. The other item, so I was wondering, why can't the middle school get all of their 4 core classes or all their core classes in every day of the week? Especially as I believe we're tending towards full remote again. The other item I have is full transparency for what the school district is using as metrics for deciding when we go to full remote. What websites are they looking at? And let the public know so that we have that same transparency and we can look at that, so we're not having to change our life on a whim and on an email. It makes it harder for everybody to plan. The other item or question I have is, or something that I'd like to point out is, it seems that there's a lot of use of third-party videos during live Zoom sessions. And I would really ask that the administration ask that this gets minimized so that the time that is on Zoom is spent with actual live instruction where students can talk to the teachers and ask them questions and get help on the lesson so that they can get follow-up. Another item that I would like to mention is I guess that's all I have at this time. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. I appreciate your questions. Oh, wait, hold on. Sorry, you still have a little bit. Hold on. I'll ask you to unmute. Sorry, go
I'm sorry,
ahead.
there was one other question. I know that Mr. Smith asked a couple weeks ago how the kids will meet the requirements for their education this year. And I have the same question, and I felt the question was kind of brushed off and not answered well. If I have the same question, and I'm sure there's a lot of other parents out there that have the same question, please educate us as to how these kids are meeting these requirements, because I feel like there's a whole community here that has the same question. And by just saying, you know, you guys don't understand, you're right, we don't. Educate us. That's what we're asking for. And also, how will the school district be basing what the kids are receiving for education this year? Are there going to be some kind of testing or assessment to see where our kids fall in the spectrum? Now, that we've been on this remote learning. Thank you for letting me have this
Thank you.
opportunity.
Thank you, Ms. Elliott. Okay, Melissa, we have one more, I believe.
Yes, the last one was a resident named Mark Elliott.
Okay. Okay, Mr. Elliott, you're going to get a message to unmute.
Thank you, Ms. Parnell. I believe you can hear me.
Yes, yep, go ahead.
Thank you to the school board for hearing our comments. First, I want to say thank you to the teachers and the administrators for getting our kids into school at least part-time. I know my kids are much happier, and I feel like they've gotten more out of the last 2 days of school than they have in the previous 8 weeks. I think this is a sad indictment of where our district is, and that we're failing our kids. Our board needs to start challenging our administrators to find solutions to the challenges we're facing so that we can give our kids what they deserve as an education. I've talked to so many parents around town who are frustrated by the lack of information, the lack of responsibility, and the lack of education that they're getting. And I'm just saddened to see what our kids are going through, and my kids personally, and the frustrations they see, and the fact that we're not doing anything to solve the real problems here. So I want to end this by saying, we need to do more of what we've done over the last 2 days. I don't know how we're going to expect our kids to educate themselves twice a week in this remote learning process when there's no accountability, no access to teachers, and no information to help our children thrive. I encourage the board to really look deeper and challenge this administrative leadership to find solutions to all these challenges that they present without really documenting how we can overcome them. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Elliott. Okay. Okay. Mike, are we good to go ahead? Do we need to unmute or?
Everyone
Unmute
should now
board member.
have it. They should all have the ability to do so.
Okay. Okay. So we are now moving on to current business. The first item up is going to be HCS renovation plan discussion. Mr. Smith, you're going to be leading us through this.
So first, thank you, Madam Chair, and everyone for this opportunity to talk about central school renovations. Acknowledging the comments that were just made, I want to say, when it comes to central school renovations, I want to, again, talk about what is the elephant in the room. We can all agree that we want our kids back in the classroom. Yesterday was the first step in that. I think it was a good, positive first step. We're going to talk about central school renovation. And we know at this moment, we're moving forward and accomplishing, more for our kids. And that's what we can do right now. I want to communicate to the town, to the community, those on the call right now, and anybody else that'll listen after this, that we will be coming to the town of Hampstead, to the board with a plan to bring forward a renovation for the central school for the kids, the teachers, the parents, staff, and community. This is gonna be a little long-winded, but I just want to, be transparent. I want to talk to, to everybody on the call, from, again, board members, community, admins, teachers, even students that may be listening. Last year we decided not to bring a plan for the central school. It was the hardest decision for myself. I know it was one reason I joined the board. It was one that literally caused a split amongst the board. I honestly wish that we were able to come to a good, solid plan last year and able to, agree to move forward with that vote. The plan from that point was to evaluate the plan, discuss the best approach and how to communicate that properly, and attempt to finally get the approval of the school plan that is needed for our kids. I don't think it's a matter of that we don't believe that something's needed in some school, but that we, how to get that accomplished. And then since then, we're talking last January, none of us could foresee what was going to happen to the world over this last year. While we do understand what has happened impacts many of our lives and impacts any planning with the schools right now, we are preparing to provide the board and community a plan that will want to move forward on the warrant in March. Some have asked, why would we do this now, and question the intent. I guess before we get into this details of the plan, I want to talk about Megan and I, who are leading this right now, this renovation plan for this year. Give you a little bit of background who we are, and to be transparent, to try to build trust with you, the board, and the community. So first, I'll talk about myself. I'm going to turn it over to Megan, and then we'll get more into the plan. My background, besides being a board member and a father and a husband and many other things, is my background in my work life is in project management, data management, and program management. I've been involved in leading multi-million and multi-billion-dollar proposals where my involvement was to organize and evaluate investments to understand their returns and ensure that there's value to the customers. During my years of preparing bids, I've had to lead many difficult discussions and conversations to ensure that we are adequately incorporating the needs for the short and long term, identify risk, opportunities, and ultimately put together a proposal that would satisfy the needs of the customer while providing the most value to the company. Now, when it comes to school renovations, I believe we'll be doing the same thing for the community and to the teachers and kids. We will be taking into account all the needs of the kids, the teachers, the parents, the administration, staff, creating a proposal of why our community should vote to invest in this proposed plan. And I believe that based on my experience, the community can trust that I intend to do the best when bringing a plan to the vote. Megan, I'd like to turn over to you just so you can introduce and talk about your background and what you bring to this involvement of the plan.
Great. Thanks, David. Thanks, everyone. So I've been working in finance, the fun part of finance, for the last 13 or so years, primarily in the high tech and software industries. In these industries, it's really all about making the right strategic decisions to remain competitive due to the highly volatile nature. We all see how swiftly technology advances. And I view a finance organization as a customer service center. My role is to provide executive leadership, really all levels of management or anyone who's a decision maker, the data they need in order to help them with strategic planning and business direction. This comes with budgeting, forecasting, measuring performance to P&L plan. And if you need help connecting the dots, the decision makers in this scenario would be the parents, teachers, faculty, community members, taxpayers. So I think being in finance in a fast-paced industry, a lean mindset has naturally been forced upon me. So how do we cut costs while gaining efficiencies? What is the return on investment, long-term, short-term payoffs? And what are the potential risks and opportunities that come along with making certain organizational decisions? Additionally, for me, in my professional experience, though it really stretches to all life experience, is I have a strong willingness and desire to really understand the full picture. I love to ask the question why, and relating this to why we're all here tonight, really in efforts to bring the best plan to the community for vote. I'll be focused on driving a collaborative environment for us all to develop an understanding of why we're here, what makes sense, what we plan to do, and how we're going to get it done. My goal is to foster an understanding within the community and develop a forward-thinking mindset so that when we all do get to the polls in March, we're making well-educated decisions for our school community.
Thanks, Megan. All right, so let's talk a little bit about the plan. And I know immediately there are some members of the community that just probably don't want to hear about a plan right now because we are focused on our kids. But we do believe that the plan for a renovation is needed for the long term. And that's what we're focused on, is the long term here. By not bringing a plan to the vote this past March, we've been able to thoroughly review that plan that was on the table 2 years ago to see what is needed now. We have been able to gather a better understanding of the current environment and how it may impact the school's needs. To give you an example that really resonates with me is recently we heard from Principal Collins a few weeks ago when we were talking about budgeting, that if we were in school full time right now, the plan was that they were going to have to figure out how to provide one more classroom that we don't have space for. That grade was going to be over our maximum amount per classroom. And they were intending to look at the library to be one of those classrooms, as we don't have room to expand. We would have lost the Learning Center for Children. We have a wonderful library, staffing that library, they're amazing in there. And our kids really enjoy going to that library. I know I've heard from children and parents that it's a wonderful resource. We want to continue to give that experience for the children, to be able to escape from their classroom, to be able to go to the library. I know for myself, I have fond memories of being in the library. When I was a child, I'd go in there and I think I'd mount an adventure with Huckleberry Finn. I researched the endangered red wolf to understand the impact of humans on wildlife. And yes, both of those are true stories. I did okay on that research paper on the endangered red wolf. I imagine that we all want to give that experience to our children, to be able to get to the library and get to the rooms and have that space to learn and nurture ourselves and be nurtured by our teachers and our wonderful staff. The school administration, the teachers, paras, and many others have done everything they can to optimize the current space for a proper learning environment. We want to continue to make that, Hampstead school experience that many of us moved to this town or decided to stay here. It's one that our kids have flourished. It is literally a place that I just convinced a friend of mine to move to Hampstead because of how great the school system is in the community. And everything that they've read, they were drawn to this. They just put an offer on a house this week so they can move here. It is something we are all proud of. We are proud of this school. Again, we want to continue to flourish here. We want our kids to flourish. We want our community to flourish. We've also learned that the population of students has risen more than we expected. If you look at the numbers from about 4 or 5 years ago, we thought that we were going to be relatively flat. We are ranging from the 420 to 450 student population range. This year, we would have had over 500 kids in the central school. That was 50 more than we expected. And you can believe that that number is going to increase in the coming years. I'm not saying this to scare you. This is the reality. We expected this over the years, and we've been communicating this in the present. The future is now. With class sizes increasing, we're at the tipping point. We'll be looking to have, the student to teacher ratio in these classrooms 25 or more in some cases. We know that we want to have a better learning experience for children, and by having more students in these classrooms, it's gonna take away from that environment that we want for our kids. I believe we all chose to have a better learning environment for our kids, and that ultimately provides value to this town. I'm not going to go into how it does. I think we all understand what the value of a good education does and how that draws people to this town. We've also learned, as another example, that we've had to limit the amount of full-day kindergarten classes. And I hope that, Mr. Collins, I did not ask you if I could say this, but I hope you're okay with this, that, we've had to talk about turning families away from full-day kindergarten because we just don't have the space to provide more. We provide the half days, we provide full days, but we could provide more for more families if we had more space for them. And simply because we've run out of room. Again, our teachers are providing a wonderful experience in kindergarten, and we want to provide that. Start those relationships, start that learning early. The impact is not only in education, which is very important to provide, but this also means we lose a portion of the revenue stream that we have by bringing in full day kindergarten. While that's not the focus, it's a reality as well. And with adequate space, we're able to provide more kindergarten get those families in the school system sooner. So I'm going to now start talking about what we've been doing recently. This past week, we had a small group of us that were able to go into the classrooms. We went through all parts of the central school that were deemed part of the 60s renovation and where the impacted areas of additions and other renovations. We did the walkthrough with Mr. Collins, Mr. Dowd, Mr. Mackey, Dr. Metzler, Megan and I, as well as members from Trident. And yes, we are socially distant. We had our mask on. We made sure that we were properly safe in there in the building. And after walking to school and seeing many aspects of the plan, then we met and to review the drawings of the plan that we're looking to incorporate and bring to the vote. Even in there, we continue to look at how can we optimize this for the children? How can we make the bathrooms closer to where they're at? How can we bring bathrooms to the second floor where we have one set of bathrooms that is serving over half the population? I feel we did an excellent job of completing the final touches and to ensure that we are not only right sized for the needs of the students, but also looking at in the future and being able to provide a true renovation plan that is going to satisfy us for many years to come. All right, I know everybody's going to be asking, what does this mean? What does that plan look like? What I can say right now is we're going to provide the classrooms that are a priority for the kids. We're providing adequate spacing for the kids. We're going to ensure that there's enough classrooms for our anticipated growth and that we're not going to come back in 2 years, 5 years, 10 years to say we've already outgrown it. We're making sure we're right sizing this. We're also providing the flexibility in the classrooms and the educational settings that allow the school to shift and pivot to the students' needs quickly. We've talked with Mr. Flynn, we've talked to Dr. Metzler, we've talked to Mr. Mackey about how we can make a flexible school footprint that will allow us to shift and pivot if 1 year we get more students one grade and just being able to, again, be flexible to the students' needs. We're also looking to make sure we have proper ventilation. We've all heard recently how important that is. We want to continue to make sure we have proper ventilation for our students and staff that allow for good, clean air that will be climate controlled while reducing the amount of money that we currently spend on this. We spend more than what we need right now. And that's because of inadequate ventilation, it's inadequate insulation. There's a lot of inadequacies that are in the current 60s wing, as we know. Again, we're looking at adequate bathrooms in all the areas of the building so students can use the facilities close to their classroom. We're continuing to plan for a dedicated gymnasium, cafeteria, and music room. And this is why we want, and the reason why is because we want to provide the children dedicated places for physical education, which is separate from where kids eat lunches, and finally be separated from where they learn how to sing and play music. Our children deserve that. I know we all believe that. We can all be proud that we have these dedicated spaces that will, help our kids grow and prosper. We're asking the community to continue to be helpful as they have been and push towards right sizing the school. I know it's hard to consider everything going on this past year as we continue into 2021. If we can look beyond that, our kids' needs are going to continue to grow. Our population is continuing to grow. We do need the space more than ever and are asking everyone in the school district to be part of this. We don't want to have separation here and angst between community members. We want to come together and collaborate in how do we do this and vote for this so we can finally pass this for the kids, the staff, teachers, everyone involved. So just a few more things, Caitlin, and the board. I promise, gone on for a few minutes here. Long story short, as long as the board approves the direction and moving forward with getting the renovation in front of the community to vote on, Megan and I will be reaching out to members of the community to provide more transparency of the plan. We will hold Zoom calls. We know that we're not going to be able to be doing a lot of face-to-face. We're going to be planning on over communicating. We're going to be providing that transparency. We'll be reaching out to every club, every association, and all the leaders of the community. We'll be reaching out to share information. We'll be reaching out to answer questions and ultimately ask for the community support. We know we will have differing opinions on what's being provided, of whether or not we should move forward or not. All that Megan and I can ask is you entertain discussion and you make a decision from there based on the knowledge and information we share. And we will listen also. Again, we're only asking for the opportunity to communicate the needs of the school and how we as a community can come together to continue to support our school, our kids, the teachers, and more. I would like to answer just a few questions I've received multiple times from many people, because I think it's important that we have a very direct answer for this. And these are questions Megan and I have talked about. These are questions that Megan and I, we went back and forth together, and in quite transparency, we questioned if we should bring anything to vote this year, because we know the climate right now, we know the environment. Ultimately, we had to look past this year and look at what's good in long term, as our board members have done in the past, and we continue to have done for the last 6 to 7 years with the renovation plan. So some of the questions: what has changed this year? You did not submit it last year. Why this year? My response is nothing has changed from our decision last year. We stated at that time that our plan was not to submit last year, and that we fully intended to bring this to the board this year and to the community to vote. We all agree this is a vital renovation. We believe we will be supported by those that take time to understand the value of the renovation and want to continue to make Hampstead school system one of the very attractive reasons people move to this area, and why our little town continues to provide the community value in their homes. Another question: you stated there are some design changes. Why is the plan changing again? You are correct that the plan has changed. If we look back, the community has continued to not agree with the exact plans and or how we communicated the need. I also feel we would not be successful if we continue to push on the same plan that community does not agree with. We have looked at our plans, incorporated areas we learn about that improves the value of the school. Hampstead has always been very supportive of our teachers and our kids when it comes to our budgeting. Our schools, teachers, and staff have always shown that they provide an excellent education to our kids. And if you look back over the last 80 years, the town has added onto the school. We have the 40s, the 60s, the 80s wings. When we talk to people from those timelines that are still around, they talk about the pride that was in the community at that time and how they supported the renovations. We are now at the tipping point, and we have an amazing community that can add another mark in the town's history to provide a renovation that will satisfy the needs of our kids for more than 20 years. A couple more questions. What about other needs of the central school and the middle school? Why are those not part of this? And does this mean we're not focusing on the other needs and have blind spots and pitfalls? I'd say fortunately for Hampstead, we've hired an amazing facilities director in Jeff McMackey. He has outlined a 5+ year roadmap for renovations and repairs. He believes we will be able to take care of those needs with the allocated budgets. And that's great for us. It really is. We have a plan of attack for the ongoing maintenance and repairs that is based on our current budgeting. And that's going to support the needs of the kids, the teachers, the staffs, and more. And this community kids continue to approve those budgets, which we are very appreciative of. Big question now. Town continues to vote against the plan. This year may be the hardest year to get anything approved. Not to mention there are competing needs that are most likely going to the ballot as well. What makes you think the town will finally vote to approve this? That was a hard question for me to, really soak in and discuss with somebody. And I'm going to be honest. I'm not sure if the town will vote yes. What I can say is that we as a community need to come together. When I first moved here, I was told how great the school systems were. And you know what? I do agree. They have been great. Well, this year is a challenge for everyone. I know this town, this community can and will rally. We just need to find that nugget of success and tap into it, whatever it takes. It's not a matter of if, but when do we approve this? And it's going to take a village. And I'm going to tell you, in order to get this to pass, we as a town will need to heal from this year. We'll need to come together. We'll need to support this like we never have before. Last year, when we decided that the plan was going to be not going to the ballot this past March, we heard from many that wanted us to support it. We also heard from many that said it was a good thing we didn't put it on the ballot. But what I'm asking now is community members from then, as well as anyone listening now or anyone in the community that hears this, contact Megan and I. We're going to need help from the community to pass this. We have many ideas on how to reach the community and help it communicate the need, and we could use everybody's support. So that is an ask here, is anybody that wants to be involved. And I'm not talking about going door to door, but anybody that can carry the message in conversations with friends, neighbors. We want help. We're going to need that help. It cannot be upon Megan and I. It cannot be Megan and I, the administrators, the teachers. It cannot be just on us. The whole town has to be behind us. And I'll say it again, we will be coming to every club. If you are a president of a club, you are a leader in the community, we will be coming to you to talk to you about this. We're not asking that you have to publicly say you support it, but we want to be able to have a discussion and have you understand what this means for our kids in our community. All right, last thing, Caitlin, I'm wrapping it up. I promise everybody. We have a number of areas that we're going to be focusing on over the next month. And as long as the board approves it, further from there. I'm going to just throw out some major dates, some major milestones that are coming up so that we're being transparent on what's going on. And if you have any feedback, you have questions about this, I certainly will go in more detail, as will Megan, and I'm sure anybody else on the board would answer. I think one of the biggest ones that we have coming up is on November 25th. We have the DOE coming in for a walkthrough. The reason for this is that we've submitted this plan in an estimated budget of what we're going to need to the state for state reimbursement. While we are on one of the lower tiers that could possibly get state reimbursement, this is a major date because we're going to show them what we're going to get out of this renovation. We're going to show them that there are safety concerns. That is only going to help us in the prospect of getting state reimbursement. If this passes in March, again, I'm saying if, I'm not saying anything that's is a definite. If we get this passed in March and we're selected, then the state reimburses up to 30%. I just want people to think about that. If you were doing a home renovation and you found out you could get a reimbursement of 30%, are you more inclined to go for it? I want you to think about it and have that resonate because that is something we're going for. Whether or not we have a great percentage or a small percentage, I'm not sure. But if you don't play the lottery, there's no chance you're going to win. And that's how I look at this one. We need it anyways. So November 25th, we'll be doing a walkthrough of the DOE to show them the benefits of our 60s renovation and the rest of the renovation plan. On December 5th, we're going to be completing the final schematic design and associated cost. And then we plan on December 8th at the board meeting to bring that to this meeting, to this community. We will discuss the benefits of the plan, what we're getting from it, as well as the associated cost. We're also going to, over the next month, we're going to be talking about how we're going to fund this. We're looking at creative ways, challenging our budgets, as well as what that would mean if we brought it to the warrant as a bond. Just know that we are looking at alternative ways, and we will discuss that openly as a board so that everybody understands what are the different avenues we may go down to try to fund this for the long term. From now until March, and this is as long as the board approves that we go forward in December with this, we will be meeting with community members, as I said. So if you don't want to wait for us, come talk to us. We will come to any one of your meetings. We'll call into one of your Zoom meetings, no matter what club association you're in. We'll also be planning to do contractor nights. By working with Trident, we'll have multiple Zoom calls where we will provide information for local contractors so they can bid on the job as well, so they can be part of this, so that we can keep the dollars that we spend to local contractors. There'll be a lot more information about that, but that'll be happening in the months of December through February. And lastly, just thank you for the time. I know I've gone on way too long maybe, but we want to be transparent and discuss this openly so that everybody knows what we're doing, what we're thinking, why we're thinking it, how we're going to do it. And there'll be a lot more information in the coming weeks and months. Thank you.
Thank you, David. I appreciate the timeline that you're laying out here so that we know when to expect it, when people know when to expect it, it'll go in front of the board. Do you have, I'm totally going to put you on the spot, but Mr. Dowd may be able to answer this. Can you remind me when we possibly get notification from the DOE if anything's awarded? I know it's a long process, and if you don't have it in front of you, that's totally fine.
It is a long process. I will get that information when they come out and do their site visit in November.
Okay.
Their process has been a little bit fluid this year based on the current environment, as you can imagine.
Okay. Thank you. Appreciate it.
Any other questions from me or Megan, from you, Caitlin, Jim, or Karen?
Nope, thank you.
I don't have anything else.
Not right now, David. Thank you. Thank you, Megan.
Okay. Okay, I think that's it. We'll look forward to hearing how the walkthrough goes and the final plan when you're ready on the 8th.
Thank you.
Thank you both for your work on this. Okay, next up on our agenda is an update on our learning plans and transition from Mr. Flynn and Dr. Metzler.
Thanks, Caitlin. Mike, you can go ahead and get started with the PowerPoint.
Okay.
Well, first let's start. This is our new dashboard that once we transitioned into phase 2, which is hybrid. We wanted to make sure that we had data available for people to see. We kicked around a couple of different dashboards. Lots of districts are showing different things. I have to credit a resident. I know he doesn't want me to do this, but I have to because he really Steve Berube helped us with this. He did a great job with our administrative team, and so I want to thank him publicly because it was we had a few things that just weren't as pleasing to the eye or weren't as clear, and this just really puts it all right there for you, and it's really easy to read and easy to follow. So again, thank you, Steve. Appreciate your help and super supportive all along with this plan that we've had implemented. Phase 1, now we're into phase 2, and this is a big piece of it. So again, thank you. Mike, you want to talk a little bit about the numbers and how we're looking at these and what they mean?
Sure. So we will be tracking data while we are in schools. And I know Dr. Metzler mentioned that several schools are doing it and presenting it in different ways, but this will help us along the lines in regards to staffing and how we're maintaining it. And as you can see, over the first 2 days, we've had pretty high success rate with both in-person with HEA, HAS, and as well as students. We're going to continue to track this, monitor trends, see if there's a dip. And then obviously we're going to update the dashboard. The goal would be updated at minimal Monday, Wednesdays, and Fridays. But if there's significant change in data, we will be updating it as much as needed. I want to commend both. I know you're going to hear from the principals here shortly, but I'd love to commend both the students and the staff for the last 2 days. The excitement that's been within the building, within the students and the teachers and the staff. They've done an outstanding job of transitioning into this new world that we're living in currently. And it's been smiles and laughter and singing and all those things. So it's been great feeling in the building, and everyone has done a great job on transitioning.
So Mike, if I could jump in. So, at this point, I want to apologize for an email that went out that was misleading in a sense that we needed metrics or we're using metrics to make a decision. In this local control thing, our decisions will be Hsdsb decisions. So, are we looking at metrics? Of course we are, but we're looking at ours. So we told you right when we started, number one, we weren't going to experiment with your children. We did not, so we made sure that we put in a safe learning plan. We have watched what's going on around us. We've watched other districts commit to metrics, exceed their metrics, then have to change the metrics in the middle of the game, and just really confuse people even more. So, this is a Hsdsb decision, although we will be looking at those metrics that you see on the dashboard. We have a solid remote platform that we can return to if we need to. I do believe we positioned ourselves nicely here in phase 2. And, we obviously have our post Christmas holiday vacation kind of remote week quarantine piece that will get us into January. And then, we'll be looking hopefully at some point of getting into phase 3, if things go well. So we'll be watching that closely. But this dashboard, it's, comes from a COVID Now website. And you can take a look at, that's the daily new cases, and you certainly can go on there. Right now we're in a substantial, we probably need about, we have quite a ways to go for Rockingham County to get into high risk. But, for our schools, the last 2 days, I want to commend all the staff and certainly the students. We, our attendance rate is great. Participation has been great. People have been excited, and it's really, this next part of our plan that we shared with you in late August, early September, it has really gone well. So again, thank all the teachers and certainly staff and people that have made that happen. So, this will be the place where I think parents should go and take a look. But again, I want to emphasize, we're going to look at metrics, but we're certainly going to make sure that we keep this a Hampstead decision. And right now we're in really good shape. So again, this comes from the COVID Now website if you're interested, and that gives you kind of a breakdown, a number of different metrics you can look at. But we're not using those to make the decision for the Hampstead School District. We're going to keep that. There's going to be multiple measures that we look at, but right now, one of the things that people, that have, you've heard a lot about this, right? Schools are not places where, are not super spreaders, and it's not necessarily where the virus gets spread. You need to keep in mind it has as much to do with staffing as it has to do with where the virus is spread. So we want our schools to be safe for our students and for our staff, and we certainly want to make sure that we have enough staff to do a good job in a hybrid model or if in a full return. So those are some challenges. I know not everybody always understands. It's a pretty complicated puzzle. Again, the administrative staff with the teachers and the paras have done an outstanding job getting us in this week. So again, I commend their efforts, and certainly, we're looking forward to this just getting better and better, and hopefully, again, being back in a full return soon. We just don't know how soon. But Mike, I don't know if you wanted to add a few words.
Yeah. So before I pass it on to Mr. Collins and Mr. Nola, a few more, I'll call them positive updates. Chromebooks, it's official. They are at the supplier and they are leaving the warehouse tonight, and they are on their way to us. So that is real news. And once I get, they're supposed to leave the warehouse at 8:30 tonight. And once I get a tracking, I'll have a good idea of when they're arriving. We looked into expedited shipping, but it was nearly $3,800 to get them here about 3 days earlier. So we're just gonna wait them and let them arrive at the right time. The next one's LNA update. We had some interviews, so people have applied for that. It's going to help continue to support our nursing office as we continue to move through there. We hired another custodian, so that has also happened since the last time. So things are starting to fall into place. We also had 2 substitutes, believe it or not, we've interviewed over the past couple of days. So we're doing all the right things to help support that staffing issue, which can become really the critical need to making sure that we have the right people in place. The last thing before I pass it off to the principals on reviewing the past 2 days is the bus drivers. They're running new routes, and it's a new form, having K-1-2 do both morning, middle, and afternoon. So compliment to them through, I'll call it the organized chaos of the last few days of the ons and the offs and the pickups and the drop-offs. So they've done a great job. And last, I really think the custodial staff and what they've accomplished to open these buildings with Mr. Mackey and the work that they're doing consistently throughout the day, nonstop, not sitting down, moving around, cleaning all high traffic areas. They've done a phenomenal job. The night crew turning the buildings over so that everyone's entering a clean facility. It's just a compliment to the hard work that everyone's put in from top to bottom. So I appreciate it. And without further ado, I'll pass it off to Mr. Collins.
Well, Mike, one more. Can I just jump in
Sure.
real quick? Before? Thank you, Mr. Collins. The other piece about we want to be able to communicate really quickly and efficiently with if we have any cases. The Department of Youth and Health Services, DHHS, as you know, really overwhelmed, and so that contact tracing. So we'll use our dashboard, but we'll probably apologize in advance. So if you're getting multiple letters every time, if we have a remote student that has a case or any cases in our community, we want to do a really good job communicating, and then you can make informed decisions about what you need to do. At some schools, you're hearing now about blended attendance, if you will. So some kids are, even though they're in a hybrid and they're in a hybrid cohort, they're choosing to go remote. We hope we don't get to that point, but that option obviously is one that's a personal decision. It's a family decision that you make. I just ask that you please communicate with your obviously your building principal and your children's teacher so that they know when they can expect you in person, and if not, when you'd be remote. That's going to create some challenges for us, but I think Mr. Flynn and the administrative staff are ready in the event that we have to go that route. But we're not there yet. Our cohorts are solid and moving ahead. We just need to be prepared for blended attendance in the event that we get to that point. So thanks, Mike.
I guess that's my cue to get started here. I have a whole bunch of things that I could just talk all night, but I really want to just give credit where credit is due, which is the whole community of Hampstead. It's really been fascinating, having been in the community for nearly 40 years now, to see something that I have never seen before. But all of the elements have always been in Hampstead. David talks about you moved to Hampstead for a reason. A lot of people grew up in this community. The reality is all of the great things in the community have come together to make where we are today. Yeah, the thrill of seeing little kids' faces in school is probably the peak of my whole school year. Even though they're behind masks and they can't see my face, but they were commenting, they saw Mr. Collins's ties. Those are the important things that are far more important than all of this disjoint that's been existing. Yes, the cohorts are in place. It was not an easy task, to be very honest. We're still tweaking it every day. It was a monumental effort. Parents sent it in, then they also tucked in a little bit of busing information and all of this other stuff, but it's in place. An interesting thing that fell out of this is when we first started this, we thought this is what was going to happen. We've got 80% of the students at the central school that are coming into school in one of the cohorts, A, B. Meaning the morning or the afternoon with the little guys, or the older ones on the first 2 days of the week or the next 2 days of the week. And 20% of the students are in that cohort C, as well as a small handful that are doing the cohort D. So, families were able to find what was the right niche for them. And the other fascinating piece is that didn't happen in a vacuum, because we needed to have teaching staff. We needed paraeducators that are stepping up to the plate to take care of all of these pieces. I mean, I literally had a couple of teachers said, I'll do what you need me to do. This is where I am, I'll do it. And it worked out pretty well. Some of the numbers were a little bit imbalanced at some grade levels, but once again, the teachers, the common mantra I heard from them is, I got it. We got this one. So, my compliments to them. The parents have been awesome, very patient, waiting for the 3 days it may take me to get caught up with the inbox at 120 emails, trying to take care of those pieces. And it's not just me. Dr. Cheney's been on the phone endlessly trying to, work out all of these little details. I just handed off some pieces to her, some scheduling pieces, which were not an easy task. Just think about how difficult it is to build a school schedule. Now tell us to build a school schedule with 4 interlocking pieces called cohorts that don't totally mate up. Yet you have a lot of teaching staff that go all the way across. So my compliments to Dr. Cheney and all the teaching staff for making that work. Just need to put in one more reminder. I've been sending a few communications out to parents. Tomorrow's no school. Thursday and Friday is cohort B, 3rd and 4th graders coming to school. We'll continue with the morning and the afternoon with our little guys. Next week is actually a 5-day week. I'm looking forward to seeing what's going to happen. Monday and Tuesday, we got our cohort A kids. And then Wednesday and Thursday is a cohort B kids. And on Friday, we're going to mesh those 2 cohorts together and have a fun day of remote learning. Except the little guys are going to continue with that morning and the afternoon piece, which is working out really well. The next thing I just wanted to go into is teachers, paraeducators needed to reinvent themselves, and it's just been amazing to see the way they've done that. Everybody always has their things in their profession that you lean upon. These are sort of the tricks of my trade. Now you take all of those to the teachers and say, well, you can no longer stand in front of the board and do those little things that you've crafted so well over years of pedagogy and teaching, and start throwing in that you're on a screen, you're not on a screen, you're doing this. And it's been amazing to see what is going on. One of my favorite things to do is, a lot of the teachers were teaching at school. I'd literally just walk into the back screen, or I log into the screen and see what's going on in those rooms. The kids are just really, they're doing their best. They're doing the great piece. Some of them, it's not working great for them. We know that, but some kids don't work great in a standard classroom too. So we've been adapting. Our paraeducators have been trying to find ways to work to take care of the kids. Some of them have done some amazing pieces. uh, just literally preparing packets to go home, just to do things such as that, yet also taking that intimate time in a WIN session with the child. Compliments to all of them. Our teachers have been developing asynchronous, synchronous lessons and blends thereof. I mean, our unified arts team is just, one of the most creative teams I've ever worked with in all of my years. They found some really cool ways to make this work. I'll give you a simple example. On those days that children are not in the building, or those mornings or afternoons they're not in the building, that's when they're going to get that music class. That's when we're going to get the technology class. Mr. Torelli's doing some in the building with the older kids and some asynchronous, synchronous back and forth there. We've got ventures, interventions, and other things like that that are going to go on to those times when the children are not into the building. And that was a conscious decision for a lot of really good educational reasons, because we want them to really get those solid, what we call tier 1 instruction when they're in the building, and catch those interventions later. And my credit goes to those teachers that figured out how to do that. Our FLESH program is off to a really interesting start. The first 2 years, the first year got clipped with what occurred in the spring, and the second year got clipped at the beginning. Yet we've got an amazing teacher, Izzy, that's done some really interesting, innovative pieces, and muy bueno, very, very well done. So I just want to say thank you to those people. One of the things that was really an interesting challenge, David spoke and Megan spoke a little bit earlier about the challenges of having a school that has space constraints on a typical year. Now you take the space constraints and stick it into an atypical year. But once again, we found ways to make it work. Our music room has been converted. If you've ever been in that room, you know that it has these little practice rooms. Those are now Zoom studios for some of our professional teaching staff that are working out of those spaces. If you go into, we actually opened up 4 classrooms around the building because teachers are now doing that remote teaching from their home or a small office that we're able to create in the building. And that's the way that we were able to spread around the special education. Our library, if you go to our library right now, children are not allowed to go in the library and roam the stacks. Yet we've got our 2 librarians that are going to get the books out to the kids, and they've gone out of the way to make it work. They actually cleared 1/2 of the library space. David and Megan and Earl, we were there the other day, Jeff, and we were walking through the building, and we needed a random space to start. Well, just so you guys know, those spaces are now filled up with storage of chairs and tables and desks that needed to leave room to make spaces and make them effective, smaller classroom, big classrooms with lots of 6-foot spacing. So my congratulations. Most of that came from the innovation of teachers saying, if I did this and we did this and we worked it through. I've found it to be an exhilarating time, even though it's probably driven me crazy trying to reinvent myself in my 20-something year of being a principal, but I really enjoyed it. And the last thing I just want to say is thank you to all those parents that sent me those nice notes. Some of them came at just the right time. When I'm reading through the 14th one, it's like, okay, well, I need to work on this little detail. And, they're really good, nice people. And then you get that one that was just sent a note that just says, thank you. We get it. We know that you're there. Some of my teachers would drive by and beep their horn and say, go home, Dillard. That's just part of what we have to do to get this done. The kids showing up in school and seeing their little faces was like I started off with. That's the real reason. Stepping onto a school bus yesterday morning and seeing little faces looking up at me, and then they were excited to be stepping off of a school bus and they could see across the parking lot. We were blessed with beautiful weather. The teachers were waiting right there. Great job, teachers. The kids got off the bus and they just got to see their friends, and it was just like a small community gathering. It was about half of the school. And then to walk around the school, they were just like little angels sitting at their desk, just, absorbing the moment and enjoying it. So I'm sure some days they're going to tell some great stories about what it was like to show up in school in the middle of November of 2020. And hopefully some children's books will tell about resiliency. And hopefully that's what's coming from this whole thing. But thank you for tossing this challenge our way. Please don't throw me another big one for a couple of weeks. Thank you so much. But I really enjoy your kids and the teachers and secretaries, paras, custodians. You all did it. Thanks. We got this one. Mrs. Denola, I'm going to hand it over to you.
Thank you, Mr. Collins. Everything you said, I can say ditto to. Our staff has been amazing in transforming our school from a building that could normally house 400 students to half that. Took a lot of ingenuity, and it took a lot of it took a lot of creativity, because you wanted to create a nice nest for the students coming back and room for the teachers to move, because we have a lot of technology, and then creating the spaces. So there was a lot of anxiety. It was like being back in August, like an August 28th, first day of school. It was heightened energy, anxiety, and absolute joy when 8:05 came yesterday morning. It was like opening up a incredible package of just loveliness. I'm gonna get emotional, but truly seeing our kids, and you think of all the messages that people would say about, oh, they're not going to be able to keep their masks on, because you know how difficult it is for us to do it, even going to the supermarket. Our kids, not a blip, nothing. Yesterday, today, they were troopers. They put them on. They understood the beautiful weather. Oh my goodness. There were so many mask breaks to get some fresh air, and it didn't mean that it was just wasted time. It was bonding time with their teachers, and to just talk about their experiences and their life that's been going on for the past 8 months, because we truly do worry about our kids. We're concerned about our kids, and just even today you could see that it was much more relaxed. Yesterday, we all had some trepidation. We all felt a little like, did we prepare? Did we plan enough? Do we have this figured out with regards to the buses, the refresh, the hallways, the bathroom visits, just the main office? How many students could be in the main office today for our Veterans Day observance? So we had to make sure that we had enough people moving it in concert, and it is like a concert. I think that's why you have two music directors here. We are directing and trying to get the kids where they need to be, with calm, and to make sure that they're part of this. They're not victims, whether they come in with us like, oh, what are we doing? But they joined with us. And I just the little one saying to us at lunch duty yesterday, and I don't duty, it's just hanging out at lunch with the kids, saying, Mrs. Denola, it's just really nice to see your face. And I said, oh man, I've aged a lot in 8 months, but there you go. And just having those moments with kids, this is what we live for. So it's just been fantastic. I have to do a shout out to Lynn Joseph, my assistant principal. I'm just so happy to have Lynn. Her ability to do the scheduling, it has changed every minute for the past 8 months of moving and shifting and making the cohorts, making sure it's balanced so kids are getting enough attention. And truly, we have spent so much time for those kids at risk and families that needed us more than ever. So if your student is a straight A student, they may not have gotten as many calls home as the kids who need us and the families that need us. So we will broaden our communications for sure moving forward. We have 375 students in our school, and we have 313 in cohort A and cohort B. In the virtual only, we have 59 students overall. And for the parent-assisted cohort D, we have 3. So making sure that everyone has what they need has been our challenge, but it has also been our joy. And I have spent most of my time speaking to parents and making them comfortable, listening to them, and trying to be as flexible as possible in organizing the cohorts that would support their needs for work and their schedules and different last names, and just making this whole bundle come together. So the facilities crew, our facilities never look so good. And we have the extra people during the day doing the sanitizing of all the common areas. The kids were troopers. They sanitize their place before they leave, their hands, just very respectful of the process. And I think with older kids, they understand more of how they can be part of making our school safe and the staff safe. And I just can't say enough. My staff has been incredible. They're so happy. They're just so happy. And I can't wait to get in on Thursday and welcome cohort B. So I'm open if you have any questions, but we're very content.
Thank you, Mrs. Danola and Mr. Collins. Dr. Metzler and Mr. Flynn, I don't want to jump in front if you're continuing on with something else, but I do want to let board members ask any questions of the principals. I'll have a chance, but if you want to save questions for the end and we're not there yet, let me know.
That was it for me. Dr. Metzler, did you have anything to wrap up?
No, we're good. We're good. The principals are prepared to answer any questions from the board. Thank you.
Okay, I'm going to open this up then to the board if you have any questions. I may give everybody a minute to decide if you have questions, because I do want to, I'm very touched by what our principals have said. And I think, you know, we all acknowledge how difficult this current situation is. But I think how you both spoke really showcases and really speaks to how much our staff, all levels, want to do what's best for our kids and want to do the best that they can in these situations. This has gone back and forth. We've been asked to prepare for remote, which as Mr. Collins pointed out, is completely different than anything that, you know, anyone in this profession likely has done in the past, at least to this extent. And now to be able to move to hybrid, we know it was another challenge. So really, to our staff, our teachers, our support staff on all levels, our administrators, I know it's been difficult, and I really do want to convey how much our kids are excited to be back there as well. I mean, I have to only speak for my kids there, but just as much time as we get is really important to them. So thank you for all you have all done and are going to continue to do as things continue to change. But I did want to say that. You both spoke with really evident how much joy there was in being back in this capacity and seeing kids and being with the kids. So thank you for how much you all care about our children in this town. Sorry, had to say that. So if anyone else, anyone has questions we want to talk about, you know, wave or yell or something. Okay, I'm not seeing anything, so I'm gonna, well,
Okay.
go ahead, David.
Yeah, some simple questions that I have, for the principals. You know, we know we've heard from parents tonight, and you know there have been some questions that have arisen about how to challenge our kids, and in questioning of what they're getting for homework or assignments. If parents feel that they want their children more challenged, if they want to talk about ways to give a better, different way of raising their education, etc., what would you say the proper way for them to reach out? What are the proper channels and that you would want them to go, instead of just elevating directly to one person or something? But what are the channels you're requesting of the community?
Thank you, Mr. Smith. Of course, we encourage parents to reach out to the teams, to the grade level teams. Please let us know. Sometimes people will think it's too much. Some people think it's too little, but we want to get it just right for your child. So please you are the voice of your child, advocate for them, speak to the team. I can speak to the team for them, but truly it's go directly to the source. The teachers really want to make sure that they're working with parents. And, you know, one of the questions is, why can't we have live instruction 4 times a week? We don't have the space because we only have 12 to 15 kids per classroom. So we have to spread it out throughout the week. So that's why we have cohort A, cohort B. And we would have to double our staff to do 4 days a week of live instruction. So those are the parameters of the 6-foot distancing and the space allotments. And that's just a hard rule that we have to follow with regards to the number of students in a classroom. But truly, please talk to the grade level teams. They will Zoom you in for a parent meeting in a heartbeat. Our protocol is within 24 hours of a parent reaching out to a team or a teacher, there is a response. So please let us know. We need to know. We want to know. It's our pleasure to have that dialogue with you.
I guess I can just sort of add to that a little bit. With the little kids, I think the first place you go is you go to the classroom teacher. And the classroom teachers are clearly the people that are going to be there. And I'd like to remind everybody, right after Thanksgiving, we're going to have those important parent conferences that would have happened by now. And that'll be an opportunity for those conversations to happen, to say that, hey, this is working for my child. This is overwhelming for my child. You know, I agree that we need to get more assessment pieces into play. So that's something that we know we need, because that guides the interventions. So that's a piece that's been a conversation. We want to get the little happy faces into school, get to know them in person, because we've got to know them across the screen. So start with the classroom teacher. When that conference comes along, that's going to be an important conversation. Emailing right now is a great piece. One of the beauties of that we've learned in the last 6 months is a Zoom conference sometimes is a big piece to get both parents. I've had a few conferences with parents that would have never happened, because, you know, dad works way off here or mom works way off there, and one of them may be local or something like that. And take advantage of the technology that we've learned so well. I think we're improving some of our communication systems. So the place to start is with the classroom teacher. And of course, at the elementary level, there are certain teachers that branch out that to do more. I mean, there's been more special education meetings that I've been to than in the last 3 months, and I've been probably in the last 3 years, because we keep individualizing, which is so critical right now, because those are the learners I've been saying from day one I was most critically concerned. Also talk to those teachers that are grabbing those kids and taking them somewhere else, such as a ventures teacher or a reading specialist. That those people are working with the children, and this is about the time of the year we start to kick into play some of those people moving into that individualization. So start with the classroom teacher, and don't be afraid to say, is my kid ready for that other stuff? And the last piece that I just want to say is arts education is so incredibly important right now. Those asynchronous lessons are an art form. Take the time to sit and watch that music lesson with Mrs. Starker. You'll probably learn more about being an artist by watching Mr. Torelli than you would imagine. And then the teachers are working on those interrelated arts pieces too. So cap it all together. That's the Hsdsb formula. Thank you, folks.
Don't be shy. We're happy to hear from you. You're not bothering us.
Hsdsb parents aren't shy, Maria. Let's call it.
I know. Keeps us on our toes.
Thank you. Thank you for that explanation, Mr. Olin, Mr. Collins. Appreciate that.
You're welcome, Mr.
The only other question I have, surprising, only 2 questions. Around the county metrics, Dr. Metzler, can you just repeat again where we're, for the dashboard, where we're getting those metrics from?
Metrics are coming from the COVID Now site, which obviously tracks all the counties in New Hampshire. You'll notice that, for instance, Coos County is at high risk there, and we're at a substantial risk. So the colors are red and orange. So it's a good site. It tracks the information just like other sites, but that's one of the sites that was primarily the site we're looking at. We're looking at other sites too, multiple measures, but that's the one that's helping us with the dashboard.
Okay, and any reason, I guess maybe that's the reason is it's that it does look more broadly than the state site. Is that more or less the reason why?
Yeah, it breaks it down into counties. I think, the state site, I know for a fact that a lot of the state's not keeping theirs up to date. I know cases that aren't being reported. And so it's, or they're being reported, they're not being calculated there. So that, I don't know, that just provides us little or no direction. I think, again, we're looking at it from a county's perspective, if you will, but I've said it many times, and again, I don't want to confuse anybody. This is a Hampstead decision. We have a really good safe learning plan in place. I feel really good. I know what's going on around us. We're watching it, but I think we're in a really good spot right now. And again, it's because of the work that the people in the buildings have put in. And you heard. I mean, listen to the enthusiasm from your two principals. I mean, it's incredible, right? So, that filters itself right through the whole building to all the staff and all the kids. So we're in good shape, and especially where our kids are good at following rules, and so that will keep everybody safe, and we'll be able to continue. I mean, that's kind of the message you're hearing, right? If we follow the rules and protect ourselves and wear masks and keep the distances, we can do this and do it really well. So again, that's kind of where we're at, but we'll keep watching that, Dave. That the metrics around us, but I just want to emphasize, we want to keep this a Hampstead decision. I think that's important. I think if we committed to any of those numbers, it may force us to do something perhaps that we don't need to do, if that makes sense, right?
Okay, thank you.
Caitlin, I get one thing, if you don't mind.
Yep.
Yep. Just like Dr. Metzer said, Mrs. Denola and Mr. Collins are pretty jazzed up to have the kids back in the building. I really think that everybody's done an excellent job. I just want to talk about a piece that maybe we haven't talked about. I know I've mentioned it before. I have several educators in my family and friends that are educators. I just want to make sure when this levels out a little bit, I know it's only the second day, that these teachers aren't working 6 a.m. until 10 p.m. every night, answering emails or creating new Google Slides or converting something that they used to do on the board into digital. I hope, we can find a balance for them, and it could be reined in a little at the time the teachers are spending. Because I know people in my family that are teachers, the time they're putting in is astronomical. 7 days a week, talking to parents, engaging the children, creating content, learning new technology. So I guess that's my comment. I appreciate everything that everybody's done. And I just hope there's no burnout by the teachers and the staff. Thank you.
No, Jim, thanks for saying that. And I, on behalf of, obviously both staffs, we want a sustainable model. And so I think, they're professionals. They realize what they need to do, and they're going to do what they need to do. But this is we're in this for the long haul. So you're right. We want to avoid burnout and, avoid those frustrating moments. So I think, again, I do, I just think we've had a really, really good plan that has provided them the opportunity to prepare for each phase as we've moved on. And I do believe they're adequately prepared for this phase, if you will, and to be thinking about phase 3 already. How am I going to transition? How am I going to make sure that socially and emotionally, I take care of myself? Because if I don't take care of myself, I'm no good to anybody else. And I think, we have, highly educated, people with our children, and I think they get that. So thanks for saying that. I know that means a lot to everybody that is putting the work in the trenches. So very much appreciated.
I could just one more comment, Caitlin, is that okay?
Of course, go ahead.
I just also want to point out, I know this evening we spent a lot of time about the students coming in the building, but I'm so proud of the schedules that were put together in order to continue to support students in cohort C, the area of focus around them. Even though they may not be joining us in the building, the schedules that have been delivered and designed for them to continue on their path with this year, more specifically at the middle school, they were able to get, in regards to our staffing, all those classes to be delivered virtually through Zoom, as well as the scheduling of the teachers to keep those kids on team no matter what occurs. So those kids in cohort C and the families in cohort C, they're going to continue to be an area of focus. And I think that's important to note because as we were putting this puzzle together, we wanted to make sure that everyone was getting equitable services. And I really believe that we have delivered on creating those environments for anyone in whatever cohort you selected. So I'm just wanted to make sure that that group knows that we still look forward to seeing them on Zoom and continuing to work with them as well.
Thank you, Mr. Flynn. Well said. Any other questions, comments from board members on this one? Okay. Not seeing any. So thank you all for that presentation and that update. We're now going to move on to our 2021-2022 budget presentation and review. Mr. Dowd, you're going to bring us through where we currently are. I'll remind everybody, I'm sure Mr. Dowd will remind everyone as well, this is our current draft. We're going to keep working on this to finalize over the next month or so. So, all right, Mr. Dowd, you are up.
Thank you, Caitlin. And this is a little bit out of process, and you and I talked about trying to make this as concise as possible because in terms of the process, because the board is really looking at and dealing with so many different issues that you really haven't had to deal with in the past at these meetings. And as a result of that, this meeting would typically be used for perhaps having our department staff, our department heads and principals present their changes in their proposed budgets to really let the community know what's going on in the schools. We met and had a work session, and a lot of those areas were covered. And as it turned out, with so much going on in the current year, there are a few initiatives going on next year, which I can name specifically from the budget that really have been impactful for the budget. And really the schools and the programs and our directors can address any questions the board has further on those, but really as a general proposition, I'm hoping this can be a little bit more concise than in years past, so you can save time. So where we're at right now, and this is, and I'll say this is a preliminary proposed budget, it's still very preliminary because one of our biggest factors is our Pinkerton tuition rates, and those haven't come in. Those don't come in till first week of December, so really almost a month away. So where we're at right now on the budget, as proposed, is $31,001,801 compared to a 2021 voted budget of $29,283,960. So we're up $1,717,841, which is a 5.87% increase. So I've delineated a lot of those increases below on the sheet you have in front of you. So you'll see that salaries make up a difference currently of $242,722. It'll actually be more than that in the end, but it's just from some cost shifting that we'll do a little later on in the process within the budget itself. You'll see that our insurance is up $426,000. Our GMR came in, and it came in at about 4.9%, and that's actually below the industry average, if you will. So we've actually done better than most of Health Trust's clients or customers, if you will. Social Security is up, not, it's up a bit, but nothing dramatic. So the next two lines though, and I'll draw your attention to these two lines right here. It's the employee retirement and teacher retirement lines. So on those lines, the state has gone up in their rates, and we're not the only school districts or municipalities experiencing this. The state's gone up quite a bit on their rates. They've gone on the employee side from 11.17% to 14.06%, which doesn't seem like a lot. It's only 3%, but as a percentage, it's actually pretty high. And on the teacher retirement side, their rates are going from 17.8% to 21.02%. Again, not apparently incredibly high from a strict, look at the overall numbers, but from a percentage, it really impacts our budgets, and it's going to impact a lot of other school districts and municipalities in a similar way. So for transportation, we're up by really our contracted piece of $38,109. Our tuitions are up, so that's a combination. We'll go into those just a little bit more in depth as we go through the more detailed three-page budget we have. Under other, we've got a broad category of $322,000, and those are actually a couple curriculum initiatives that are broken out at the school level, and I wanted to leave them there because they actually speak to both school levels. About half of that would be attributable to the curriculum initiatives. And we have some favorable savings from the capital reserve contribution that that was voted last year that would have to be voted this year to go through. So getting into more detailed budget, and this is an object only budget use. What that means is that it's really looking at object code for budgetary analysis purposes. You'll see some teacher specialist salary increases. You'll see our group insurance increase right here, Social Security, employee, and teacher retirement, which you've already spoken about. We have some increases in our professional services lines, which largely relates to services to assist in our special ed department and the needs that it sees upcoming. We have some typical increases, and we have a couple increases right here. So our tuition to public academies and our tuition to private and other schools. So those are really tied to Pinkerton. We will both shore up the final percentage. I've factored in a 5% increase at this time, and we'll factor in a more accurate increase as soon as they provide us the same, as well as what we think our population is going to be, or our census is going to be at the school as we get a little further on in the year. So that's that. And this line right here, the books and info resources, that's up 199,000. That's really due primarily to curriculum initiatives. And I'll be frank, I think that this is up and a little bit out of proportion because we've had a couple quiet years. Like you can see the budget for 2020, you can see the budget for 2019 where we had one of those initiatives as well. And those come up periodically. And this year, I believe it's about 100,000 at 100,000 and 50,000 respectively between the two schools. So a little bit more than that, 110,000 for math textbooks at the middle school and about 50,000 at the elementary school. So those really make up the majority of the changes or the differences in the budget year over year. We do have, I think especially on SAU costs, we do have some, and I'll say savings. Right now, the 310 object code, office admin services, you'll see that the entire SAU assessment from last year or for the current year is in that line at 537. I've incorporated some costs for budgetary purposes, which would be staffing costs here, just to keep it so that it's comparative. As we get a little further along in the budgetary process, I'm going to be breaking this up. These costs will go to different lines within the budget, but I think it's important to see those in one spot at this point in the budgetary process in a summary form. So that's that. And really, I think that one of our biggest unfortunate factors this year really does tie to the jump in the state retirement rate for the district. Overall, I think that's going to be our biggest budgetary increase that's going to end up. Any questions?
Jeff,
Yep, you beat me to it, Jeff. There you go. Yeah, sorry, David, go ahead.
I've got a question about the group insurance. Can you just remind me if last year, wasn't it that we didn't have an increase in insurance? So last year we actually saw a decrease?
We did.
Okay,
we did.
I think that's important to note that, we did see actually a negative on that last year, which was, in essence a positive, but this year it's positive, which is a negative.
Well, and right now we're dealing with a GMR, right, which is the guaranteed maximum rate. So that means that I'm budgeting 4.9% increase. It could come in lower than that in actual terms, in actual billing. So it may be actually lower than that in the end. So you're right. We did actually have a decrease last year or the current year, and the 4.9% is a max. So that could end up being a little bit of a pickup. We don't have those rates set till much further along in the year. The budget's usually set at that point, but we may end up with the savings there eventually. So
yeah, that's what I was going to ask you, is when do we typically get that rate locked in?
Much closer into the winter. Usually, I'd have to check and see when we got it last year. It could be January, February, and through then. I do recall it's usually a little bit too late to get into the budget itself.
Okay. Thank you.
I know this isn't quite a question, but I do kind of want to highlight the fact, because I know, frankly, we have more people right now who are probably more caught up on this process than we have in a typical year. So one of the things I want to just point out is, as we go through this, as Mr. Dowd has pointed out and indicated on this document, I mean, we have cost increases where there's no flexibility. So when we're trying to work through this budget process, and if anyone's ever attended one of our public hearings or anything like that, there's typically some sort of chart, usually a pie chart, that shows how much of our school budget is really not discretionary. So as we're trying to work through this, and we're trying to, obviously we like to keep the percent change down where we can. You know, we don't have a huge portion of the budget that we can really tinker with too much. And as we mentioned, we have needs. Curriculum comes up, and you know, don't have a lot of wiggle room on tuition or insurance or salaries, et cetera. So kind of just wanted to point that out as people are looking this over and informing themselves on this budget process as well. Any other questions from board members? I can't quite see everybody, so if you're like waving, just start talking. Okay. Mr. Dowd, just in planning as we go forward, I mean, we pretty much anticipate that now through the end of the year in our meetings, and then continuing into the start of the new year, we're basically going to be talking budget at every meeting as we move along through this, correct?
Correct, I would think.
Yep. Okay.
So not to be the
All right.
bearer only of bad news, Caitlin, I will say that for the current year, just because it's a nice little way to leave things here, we do have, and I did want to report to the board that, just as a reminder, we do have in the current year, 50,000, a little over 50,000 coming in CARES Act funding to help offset some of our pandemic costs. We also were awarded, at least initially on the initial allocation, 244,000 for the so-called $200 per student grant from the state, which is a bit of a challenge. We have to have that money spent because before 12/30. And we also have, Dave, in addition, so it's interesting, Dave, that you mentioned the lack of increase from Health Trust. We're actually receiving a return of surplus from our insurance company, from Health Trust for prior year in the amount of it'll net the districts about 130,000. So our Health Trust is not a for-profit company per se. So to the extent that they have revenues in excess of their expenditures, and to the extent that they use a lot of those excess revenues to build up their own reserves, to the extent that their own reserves are complete for actuarial purposes, they then send the balances back to the town. So we're looking at about 130 coming in this year as well. So not all doom and gloom with the budget. We do have some revenue opportunities in the current year as well. So any other questions on the budget?
Mr. Dow, can you talk to us a bit more about what you were just talking about the $200,000 that we have to spend by the end of the year? Can you explain that more?
Sure. So that is an allocation of funding that was released by the governor to school districts. And it took a little while, both for the allocation and the terms of the allocation, to be made clear to the districts. So the funding will be, I'll just say retroactively applied. It may be retroactively applied to expenses that we've experienced that are what are considered non-budgeted expenses. So expenses outside of our typical budget, to help cover costs that we've incurred largely as a result of the pandemic. So to the extent that, for example, this evening we spoke about the fact that we've hired an additional custodian position that was not budgeted. So to the extent that that custodian is hired and we're able to pay that position out prior, whatever we paid on the position up until 12/30 would be reimbursable from that grant. So that's a little bit of what that grant's all about. We have a number of expenses that are that we've already expended. We've already paid for, so we'll be able to get reimbursed from those. And I believe we're still waiting as well for some reimbursement. Sally Theriault over at the Selectman's office in Town Hall reached out to me because the Selectman had some additional allocation that they were able to share with the school district. And we'll have final amounts. I think we have to work on a final submission on that. We've already submitted a preliminary amount, but we're able to recover a lot of our PPE costs already on that. So,
Okay. If you were to estimate right now of that 200,000, how much do you think we'll be utilizing?
as much as we can. I'm not sure from a practical perspective how much we'll be able to get through. Hold on just one minute. Sorry, I just wanted to see, I did send a summary out to the board earlier as well. We had one additional project which may be able to be recovered, which was for some sinks as well. I don't know if you recall seeing that. And so these are the things that we're looking at or had been suggested that may be a little bit more of an attractive option at this point. I'm just trying to see if I can find that memorandum. And there are some restrictions on that. So a request has been made to us to see if we could come up with some options for installing sinks in the classrooms in the central school. And I shared this earlier with the board. We've gone out and obtained some cost estimates as to what that's going to be or what that could be. So the facilities department and Mr. Mackey have reached out and looking to get about sinks, hand washing sinks in about 15 classrooms, 14 in the upstairs floor, and then one downstairs at Central School. So this is it's a very problematic, logistically a very problematic setup because we don't have much water in those areas of the building as it stands right now. So it's quite a bit of work. We'd be looking at about $85,000 for those things to be piped in, plumbed in with drainage and all that. Bear in mind that's a school that's a building that is good, bad, or otherwise a very solid building. Concrete walls, floor drains are difficult. It really is quite an undertaking. So this type of project has come up. We were just notified by the DOE within the past, I don't know, week and a half, 2 weeks, or a week and a half, that we would have the funding available, but that it had to be spent before 12/30. This is a grant that is derived from federal funds, and as a result of that, based on the amount that you see, 85,000, would have to go through a public bid process if this is something that the school board was interested in pursuing. There are some logistical obstacles, let's just say. There is so much work involved that it would probably be a minimum of 2 weeks, and the contractor preliminarily had requested that no one be in the building during that time. So that's one of the options that we would have to try and absorb some of those funds and get some work done that we really would benefit from in the current pandemic environment. And I've included here, what is the need for sinks? Well, we only have one set of bathrooms on that second floor, one girl's bathroom and one boy's bathroom, and a few sinks in the art room to accommodate the needs of hand washing. So really, this would be a key addition to our campus in order to help make and create a safer environment. These were issues that we knew we were tight on before. These were issues that we knew really could use some assistance and be resolved, and we looked at it as part of some of the construction projects, but really not looking really to resolve the bathroom issue itself, simply to resolve the hygiene issue, installing sinks in each of the classrooms, maybe one way to try and get that in. I'll be honest, I don't know if this can be pulled off in time, but this is one option to try and absorb some of those funds prior to 12/30. But that project would need to be complete prior to 12/30. We've looked, and I think that we are going to have a hard time really coming up with projects that will, and costs that will add up to 244,000 with expenses either already incurred or to be incurred and completed before 12/30 that were not part of our original budget. So different kind of problem to have, I suppose.
Yeah, I mean, I would have to say, although it looks it would be great to put the sinks in. I'm not sure the timeline works, especially with, if it's going to take 2 weeks and they understandably would prefer to have no one there. We don't have 2 weeks before the 30th, hopefully, that people won't be in school. Although I hate leaving money on the table, but I'm just not sure how that one.
We're working very hard, Caitlin, to
Oh, I know.
within the parameters of the grant, we're working very hard to make sure that we can utilize as much of that as possible. So
Can we, I know we were going to have some, or I'm sure I know we talked about this, increased transportation costs, where we have, the midday run for more students. Is that something that could be used for part of this? And I don't know how much that is between now and the 30th, but.
what a great question, Caitlin. We didn't even talk about this before the meeting. So we already budget one bus for our midday kindergarten run. Anything above and beyond that is what we would be submitting for reimbursement under the grant.
Okay.
And that's already part of our normal contract. So it's just at a normal rate that we don't, we're just paying the incremental difference of that would be something we would be able to be reimbursed for.
Okay. I'm sure you will look at everything possible.
Absolutely.
So I have a question about the sinks, just going back to that, because I know that we've talked about that during the walkthrough earlier last week. Is it something that, Mr. Dad, you think that we could get a partial sinks, maybe strategically placing those throughout the second floor, if we don't think we could do all 13 or 14 classrooms and still get that done by the end of the year? And I know that we have, Fridays, Saturdays, and Sundays, so there could be a couple long weekends of doing some work, and then in addition, that final week of December. Is that something that could be looked into?
It's my intent to explore this as much as possible, and to the extent that it's feasible and we can get reimbursement, I would not mind at all for consent of the board to move forward on it. I'm conscious and cognizant of the level of work that's involved here, and in some cases, Dave, we can go out and simply throw out a request for proposal and ask for a solution. If we have a one or two, well, we would need to do a request for proposal if we had 1 or 2 classrooms that needed sinks. I'm a little bit dubious in this case, based on the number of rooms involved, that we don't need to design an initial design plan for it, which would really prohibit us from being able to get to the actual work itself. So I'd like to have a chat with our some contractors out there to see what their level of comfort is and their availability, what their availability is to be able to get this work done, based on the fact that they would probably have to put the plan in themselves. When we're getting into buildings the size of buildings that we have, it's, and for a project this big, we do like to have plans, put in, because when we think about it, it's pretty easy, right? Just run some copper pipes or run some pipes up. It's not a big deal. Well, we have issues of drains that are a bigger problem, that we don't necessarily have the run to be able to get those to go efficiently the way that we need to. We can tie them in some cases to bathrooms on the lower level, the classrooms below, which is helpful. So certainly I'm looking into, if at all possible, getting this project launched, unless there's any objection from the board, knowing that this might be a more viable project if we can get it in and completed in order to qualify for reimbursement under the grant. And if we can, I'd be looking to move forward on it quickly, if that's the appetite of the board.
Board, what's your appetite here for this one?
Yes, for me. I think it makes the most sense. We've talked about this as something that's needed, so.
Yeah, I don't think the need goes away even after I personally don't think it's bad having sinks in an elementary school. For me, the only caveat would be, can it be done in the time frame utilizing these funds?
Right.
That's my biggest piece. I know I've got some people unmuting, so anybody else want to speak to this?
I agree. Move forward.
So Jeff, do you want to vote? Do you want a motion? Sorry.
I don't think I need a motion. I think I'm fine with moving
Okay.
forward on a general consensus of the board. I think that, it's important, David, you mentioned just that I'm able to set the parameters carefully here up front, that the type and nature of this project is that there's a reason that they're asking for 2 weeks, for the work uninterrupted. It's really hard to phase this project in or to stage it in sections. So, when you have pipes or walls that might need to be exposed, or pipes that might need to be exposed, once they start going, they're going to want to continue to go through to the finish. So I will certainly endeavor to see if this type of project could be phased in or that it can be done. I don't think we're going to have 2 solid weeks without students in the buildings with a comfortable period of time that this can be completed. I certainly will work to see if there might be a way to phase it in, but the complexity of it doesn't seem terribly complicated, but it is, and the complexity of this type of project, really could hamper efforts to get it done in pieces and sections. And it's not like they can come in at night, come in after school and get some work done. It really is a dedicated time frame. But you know what, we'll reach out, see what we can do, see how it can be planned, see if it can be broken out into phases, see if the work can be done, if it has to be done at a time that the students are in the building, not literally in the building, but a weekend or a day off or something. But let's see if I'd like to see if we can get it done. Just saying the proper parameters for the board and the understanding that that's what we can do. We'll do the very best that we can do, and move forward. So.
Okay, that sounds good, Jeff. I think that makes sense. I mean, even if it's just a few sinks, as David mentioned, even if we could just get in some. Okay. I think you have your.
Just a question on this, Mr. Dowd. If any contractors are listening or hear about this, should they be contacting you? What's the typical process that's followed?
So what we're going to do is put together a request for proposal and probably schedule a walkthrough. This will be within the next week or so. And they should be on the lookout for that. I'll post it to the website. We'll distribute to any known vendors that we have relationships with or that we work with. And certainly anyone should feel free to contact us. And that walkthrough, and unfortunately, without the time to be able to put together a design, when we have a design, I can put a request for bid out where they can say, yep, we know it's going to take this many hours. We need this much materials. It requires some estimating on their part, but they should be able to look up on the website for that request for proposal.
And when you say the website, are you talking the SAU website?
No, the Hempstead website.
Okay, thank you.
Hempstead School District.
Yep, thank you.
Okay. Any other budget questions, comments from anybody? I mean, we're going to be, as I mentioned, this will be another one of our focuses for the next month or so, but. Okay, not seeing any. Thank you, Mr. Dowd. We appreciate it.
Thank you.
Okay, next up is our discussion around a superintendent search committee. So for anyone who needs background, the board did decide to do a search committee around the superintendent position that will be in effect once our split from Timberlane is final, starting in July of this coming year. So the board now made that decision. We now need to discuss how we're going to do that. I do want to make clear that if Dr. Metzler wants to apply for that, he is welcome to do so. Nobody is excluded from this, and I don't want anyone to take that away from the discussion that we're having. So as a board, we need to have this discussion. Where I started is I looked at our current SAU 55 policies, which are not exactly extensive on this regard, but we do have a policy on what to do in a search committee situation. If anybody wants to go look at this, I'm gonna reference this policy that that SAU 55 has. Again, to continue to just keep people updated, the reason I'm looking at SAU 55 policy and not Hampstead policy is because Hampstead has not been a standalone SAU at this point. So we don't have, Hampstead does not have its own policy on this type of search committee or hiring. So if I look at I looked at the SAU policies, I looked at BBBH. That policy says under item E, election of SAU professional staff. So what's outlined in that part of the policy says that when there's a vacancy in the professional staff, the chair of the board establishes a screening committee or a search committee, which consists of one board member from each of the school districts. So again, this policy is talking about when we have two districts that are participating in this. We're only one district. We can set this up, frankly, how we would like to. I think it makes sense to at least take the bones of that policy, and my suggestion is to have the chair appoint two board members. What has happened in the past is those board members, and I'm going to speak to my experience on the assistant superintendent search committee that we did a couple of years ago. The way that was formed is the chair of the SAU appointed two board members. Those board members then compiled the search committee. I think it makes sense to do that. Personally, I don't want to do one member creating the committee, and frankly, we can't have more than two, because if we have three, then it constitutes a meeting whenever those three members are together. So I would suggest two, and I would suggest letting those two members find the participants who would be on the committee. Now, we can talk about how that's done. I'm just going to give my initial thoughts on numbers. This can't be a committee of 20 people. It doesn't make sense to do that, and nothing will get done. I would suggest something in the neighborhood of like 8 or 9 members. Obviously, this is important. This is a key piece of our reorganization to a single district SAU. I would suggest if you've got 2 board members, you look at 2 administrative members also on a committee. You look at a member from the teachers union, a member from the support staff union. I had this counted and now I'm screwing it up. 2 members of the community, somebody who's from outside the schools. And then additionally, I would suggest that we have Melissa Post on that committee as well. Surprise, Melissa, that's my suggestion. But you have the experience from the assistant superintendent search committee as well. You have the HR piece that we know is going to be really important. So those are my suggestions. Those are my thoughts on this preliminary piece. We also know we have to move on this. We want to get this going in the midst of everything else. So I don't know what everyone else's thoughts are on that, but that's kind of, I'm taking a little bit of my experience. I don't have a ton, but I did do the assistant superintendent one. I'm aware of how much work it is, but I think that sizing seems correct to me. Some, talking about like 9 people. But I don't know what other board members' thoughts are on this or discussion on it. All right, well, good, you all agree with me. No, just kidding.
For me, that sounds right size. I mean, I think if we could hear a little bit more from you as far as commitment, time frame that you'd be looking for community members based on the assistant superintendent search that you took part of? I know I came on right at the very end before the fiasco that happened there with that, but you know, what type of time commitment are you looking for?
So again, just going from my experience, it was not a small commitment. I would anticipate that generally how the process worked that I was part of is we had the committee itself met, I am trying to remember how many times we met, felt like a lot, maybe 10 between separate interviews with finalists. This is going to work a little bit differently as well, just from the situation we're in. In that search, we went to the schools that the candidates worked in, and that was a full day commitment to go and visit there and talk to their colleagues, et cetera. I'm guessing that won't be, we're not going to be in that situation. So it's going to be a different setup. If you want me to give a total time commitment, let's say to be safe, you should say a couple of hours a week, but there might be weeks where it's 8 hours. If we're talking about a week that we're doing interviews and stuff like that, and then there's time where you're just all together talking about your decision and how you're going to get to a final candidate to be presented. As far as when we start and when it finishes, I would think we need to have things going and posted by I would like this to move quickly by the end of November in terms of posting the position. You need to give people time to apply. So we're probably talking about things ramping up after the new year, and really January and February would be when most of this is going to take place. I ideally would like this done. I mean, it would be great if we could present a candidate to the board by the end of February. I don't know if that's too optimistic, but I think that's what needs to happen. And it might be slightly easier to meet that time frame with the fact that we'll probably be meeting a lot on Zoom. So those are my thoughts.
Thank you, Kim.
So not hearing a whole lot of objections to this kind of thought process. This is not something we need to vote on if we're going to go ahead and go by the policy we currently have. So as chair, I would appoint 2 members. I want board members to have a little bit of time to think about this. So I'm not going to ask that people make a decision right now on if they would like to be involved or not as far as board members. I am going to put out there that I have thought about this. I would like to be one of the members involved. But if other people have a very strong feeling about that either way, or we have more people volunteering than we need, then we can discuss. But I at least have a marginal, very small amount of experience with this. So that being said, I will reach out to board members in the next day or so to finalize who's going to be appointed, and then those people can start right away thinking about who would be good fit. As far as speaking to members of the public, I know that there's plenty of people who have put out interest if we were to get to this point. I think we're really talking about 2 community, as far as numbers, 2 community members. I do have to be clear that if I appreciate everyone who would want to participate, if you presented a bias one way or the other that we're aware of, we may not be able to select you. That being said, if you are interested, you can feel free to email me. I won't make other board members be inundated, but we'll certainly look at anyone who is who has an interest, and we'll let everyone know. I'm not going to like not answer emails once we make decisions about who's going to be once the committee members make their decisions about community members. We'll make sure that's out there, and that information we will put out publicly about who's on the search committee. So that sounds good to everybody else. We can just move on. All right. I gotta find my way back here. Okay. So next up, that finishes current business. We're on to board comments and correspondence. Per my usual, I'm gonna go in the order I see you. David, anything for comments or correspondence?
Not at this time, thank you.
Okay. Jim.
I'm good, thank you.
Okay. Megan?
I don't have anything.
Okay. Karen?
No, I have nothing.
Okay. I don't have anything else to say either. Okay, moving on to consent agenda. Dr. Metzler.
Thank you, Caitlin. Yes, we, there is no personnel report tonight. I do have a very quick report. First, I appreciate, obviously Jeff Dowd with the sink update. That idea had come to me weeks ago about utility sinks, and having been in some schools. So I'm really excited about the fact that that's something I was hoping we could either do the way we're proposing now, or even as part of a project. So in your packets, I believe you have, if you don't, you should have an executive summary explaining that a little bit more thoroughly. Also, the second part about this, I talked to you briefly about this, and I know I communicated with the board in between meetings about some special ed support, if you will. And so we have a couple of requests. So I'm asking Jeff to jump in here, because I'm not sure whether or not we need to ask for a board vote in terms of making a couple of part-time positions full-time, and posting our paras. We have 7 positions with benefits. So we had some dollar amounts associated with that. So Jeff, I was hoping you could jump in and talk a little bit about, is this money we have in the budget? Is this something that will impact next year's budget? If so, how do you advise we proceed? Because we really need, we have contractual obligations that we need to meet, especially around students with individual education plans, IEPs. We want to be able to do that. We want to be able to provide that support to our director, Francine Flynn, who has put together this executive summary requesting this support. So Jeff, if you would jump in and let us know about the costs. Is Jeff not with us?
Oh, he's there. He's unmuted. Yep.
Okay.
Sorry about that. Yep, I'm here. Just a second here.
Jeff, I didn't mean to catch you by surprise. Did you hear the spirit of my questions in terms of money in the budget? Is this something we need to vote? Is this something that's going to impact next year's budget for support?
So I think that we have money in this year's budget for it. And next year, I mean, if that's something that we want to look at, in terms of next year's budget, now's the time to have that discussion. But I think we're just talking about this year though at present, right?
Well, so here, yeah, so this is what I want to make sure that the recommendations, the advice we give the board to support our current needs, that 1, we can afford it. 2, it's not going to have an impact on next year's budget. And if it's going to have one, that we're really clear on what it is. And so this request for support from the special ed director, I support this, but I want to make sure that you can afford it in this year's budget, and it's not going to be something that's going to have a negative impact on next year's budget. So that's where we asked you for the pricing, because I wanted to make sure we're able to do this. You know, so if it's non-precedent setting and we're just making sure we're taking care of the current situation, that's one thing. I know we have these positions in the budget, but we've asked for some increases. And I just want to be really clear, because I don't want, there's no surprises, no excuses here. I want to make sure that what we're supporting and agreeing to is not going to be something that cripples us down the road, because we didn't see this all the way through 2 budget cycles. Is that clear?
Yeah, it's clear to me. Yeah, I'm not seeing, I think that, I'm still looking at it from this year's perspective. There is room in this year's budget, and, from next year's perspective, I'm sure we could find if it became an issue at that time. But,
Jeff, you've had a bad mic. You kind of broke up there.
oh, sorry about that. This year's budget is not a problem to make the adjustments. Next year's budget, I don't know how much of this is going to continue on into beyond this year. I guess that's the question that I have. How much of that support is going to continue on? My impression was that this was a 1-year quest. Would my understanding be correct in that, or am I wrong?
You are correct. So
Okay.
what I want you to do is I want you to help the board in the event that they can support our recommendation with a motion that doesn't have an impact on the 21-22 year school budget, but it's something that meets our needs in this current situation, right? So I want to make sure we do this correctly so that it's not something that gets rolled forward in a default budget or a proposed budget. It's something that's going to take care of our immediate needs in this year's budget, which we can afford, which we have money to support.
Okay. Yeah. So the motion would go along something along the lines that it would be an increase in hours in of certain positions identified only for the remainder of the 20 to 21 school year, with no precedent setting impact beyond the current fiscal year.
Okay, and that works for you too with your auditing and budget preparation?
Works fine for me, yeah.
Great. So Caitlin, did you catch all that?
I think so. So we're talking about 2 positions right now that would be moved from part-time to full-time.
Correct. We're talking about the
Correct.
BCBA and the
Yep.
occupational therapist, which is currently part-time. So we want those both to go full-time. We have money in the budget for those, which I knew, but I just wanted to make sure. And then the other is those para positions. We want to post the 7 full-time positions with benefits, because we need those. So I guess when I asked to price this out, Jeff, am I corrected that those 7 positions already had benefits? Or are we adding benefits to those 7 positions?
We're adding benefits to those 7 positions for potentially for the remainder of the year, or from the point those positions are actually filled, on a full-time basis. So those positions that don't have benefits.
Correct. So what we'll have to do is we have some work to do with Hsdsb, which we're still doing. In the event that we can agree to that somehow, some way, if the board supports this, we'll be able to go forward with that and see if they're willing to do that for the remainder of this year. Correct?
Correct. Yep.
And the other 2 is those were positions that we would be spending money out of overtime or some other way to meet the needs of those IEPs with our BCBA and our occupational therapist, physical therapist, part-time. But we want the positions to go full-time so we can retain staff and expand our services or what we're able to offer.
Okay. I mean, I'm clear on this. I personally don't have any questions for myself because frankly, I want us to be staffed for what we need, especially for this population. We need to fulfill what we need to do. I don't know if anybody else has comments or questions on this. Okay, not seeing any. Melissa, do you have the motion as Jeff just said it, or do we want to have him say that again?
I can read what I have written down, and Mr. Dowd can jump in if I don't have it correct, and I can make changes to it. Is that okay?
Perfect.
Yeah, no, let's definitely do that so we can get this worded correctly.
Okay, give me one moment, please.
Okay, while Melissa's doing that, Caitlin, I just want anybody that's listening just to be clear why this is different than perhaps what we've done in the past. In the past, if we did this, it would be precedent setting. We'd be rolling these positions forward, and it'd be something we'd be carrying forward with. We're doing this in response to our current situation in terms of staffing and services that we need. So we want to be able to do it in this year's budget without rolling it into 21, 22. And we just wanted to be really clear with everyone so there weren't unrealistic expectations moving on to July 1 of next year with these positions, and especially the para positions in the event that we're able to negotiate something with HAS. Because we have those positions posted, we can't fill them. We don't have applicants, primarily because they don't benefits. They didn't come with benefits. So that was the additional cost involved to try to recruit some more paras to be able to support this special population in these different models. So that's what makes us a little bit different than years past. We just want to do it. These are not going to be rolled forward. They're not going to be part of a default budget. They're not going to be, we're going to revert back to what they were for 21, 22. Right? That makes sense?
Got it.
That would be, that's what makes this different, this request.
Okay, thank you. Actually, I have one more question for Mr. Dowd.
Sure.
So if we're trying to spend grant money, would this qualify, or it's not it's pandemic related? Like
So
the extra cost here?
yeah, so we would qualify from the point of whenever the position started paying until 12/30.
Yeah, right.
So we do have some
Okay.
CARES Act funding, which covers similar types of expenditures. I think that we really have that mostly committed, but what we've done is shifted the cost for which we're seeking reimbursement from those costs that are prior to 12/30 to costs that would be arguably after 12/30, because that grant, that CARES grant, that 50,000 actually lasts. The duration on it is it's a longer period for to incur those costs. So I think that we've got that pretty much dedicated out, but there is always the possibility that if we had some room in that grant after 12/30, we could get these into that grant as well.
Okay, thank you.
And the cost, I don't know if you have the cost in front of you. The costs were, I believe, between the two positions, the BCBA and the OTPT, about 34,580 is an incremental expense potentially. And for the paras, I've priced out 7 at 140,600, so 6 would be 120 and change, let's say, so 120,000 and change. But we've had those positions unfilled up until now, so we have some cost savings there, and there are some other areas of the budget that we may be able to we won't be spending. So we'll have the money, the room in the budget this year to do that.
Okay, thank you. All right, Melissa, you ready?
Yeah, I made a couple of adjustments per the conversation, so just let me know if this works. The motion is to make a temporary increase in hours in certain positions identified in the executive summary dated November 5th for this year only, having no impact on next year's budget of 21-22, making this action non-precedent setting.
Jeff, you tell us.
Sounds good.
Thank you.
Okay. I'm going to ask someone to make the motion. We can keep discussing if anyone needs to, but can I have a motion as Melissa read it?
So moved.
Thank you. Do we have a second?
Second.
Thank you.
Okay. Further questions or comments on this one? Okay, I am not seeing any. So Melissa, will you please call the vote?
Ms. Malcolm,
Yes.
Mrs. Parnell,
Yes.
Mr. Smith,
Yes.
Mr. Sweeney,
Yes.
And Mrs. Yusenka.
Yes.
Thank you. Motion carries. All in favor?
Thank you, Melissa.
Excellent.
Okay,
Thank
Dr.
you.
Metzler, back to you.
Yep. No, thank you so much. And just to put on your radar, in terms of, I know you provided us some additional support in lots of different areas. We might be looking for some additional maintenance support in the near future. I'll have more on that in the next meeting or two. Our custodial staff, our staff, we really, you guys just have been great. So, and that's what's helped us be successful in these different transitions. So, again, we're looking for that move to phase 3. So that maintenance position, if you would, spot could be a big part of that. The updates on the unfilled positions, that was part of my thing. So we went through that. We're still working on the IDA funds that we're hoping to get our hands on that money soon. Working really closely with the superintendents, the sending towns in Pinkerton. As you know, everyone has different plans for different reasons. Some communities are moving in a different direction than we're moving in. I just want to let anybody that's still listening, I know that the number has shrunk. I mean, we're making Hampstead decisions, right? So we're not followers, we're leaders. So we're doing what we need to do. We had a plan. We went from phase 1 to phase 2. I don't want people to get nervous as they see other schools working backwards from phase 2 to phase 1. I think we've put in place what we believe is a really good plan. We're going to stay committed to it for as long as we can. I know many of you are worried, wondering about metrics and those sorts of things. It's really going to come down to what's happening with our kids, with our staff, and what we're able to provide. And I want to make this like a cheerleading session, but your support, you're providing us the support, the resources we need to continue on with our plan, just the way we talked about in late August. So we're all appreciative. So thanks for that. I don't have anything else this evening. So thank you, Caitlin.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Metzler. I do not have any other or old business. However, I would like to ask for a non-public. I'd be looking for a motion to enter non-public under 91A:3, paragraph 2, 2 sections, C under reputation, and then additionally L under legal. If I could have a motion for that.
So moved.
Thank you. Do we have a second?
Second.
Thank you, Megan. Melissa, will you please poll the board?
Yes. Miss Malcolm?
Yes.
Mrs. Parnell?
Yes.
Mr. Smith? I think he's trying to unmute.
Yes.
Thank you. Mr. Sweeney?
Yes.
Mrs. Yusenka?
Yes.
Thank you. Time is 9:24.
Okay. Board members, you have a separate link. Well, not just board members. We've got a couple other admins coming in. So you have a separate link. I don't know. I do not believe we'll be making any decisions in this non-public. This is just an update. So yeah.
Do you want me to leave it open or close it?
It can be closed. We will not be making any decisions.
Okay, great.
All right. Thank you, everyone. Have a good night.